Okay, John, first we're going to take a look at your swing. This is at the beginning of the session. Then we will follow with PGA Tour player Grant Waite. Then we will review the fundamentals of the golf swing by looking at the different positions of the golf swing. Then I'll do some side-by-side comparisons of your swing to Grant Waite. Let's look at the swing of PGA Tour player Grant Waite. Tiger Woods said that he believes that Grant Waite has one of the best swings in golf. Now let's look at some of the key fundamental positions of the golf swing. But instead of starting at the one position, at the setup, we're going to begin at impact. The impact position is known as the seventh position, also known as the moment of truth. That's because the golf ball only responds to one thing, and that's the laws of physics and motion that exist at the moment of impact. The golf ball is on the face of the club 4 milliseconds. Everything the ball does, the speed of the ball, the launch angle, the initial direction of ball flight, the curve of the ball, everything was caused by the club's position and motion during those 4 one-thousandths of a second. The truth is, if you want to control the golf ball, you must control the club during impact. The club's position at impact is caused by the player's position at impact. And everything a player does prior to impact is done to consistently achieve a correct impact position. Let's look at some of the keys to a fundamentally sound impact position. To begin with, we're going to look at the full swing fundamentals using an iron while the ball is on the ground. First, we notice that this left arm and shaft are in a straight line and tilted towards the target. The hands are in front of the golf ball. Every fundamental in the golf swing is tied to one key objective, and that is to hit the ground with effective precision every time. There are few absolute fundamentals, but one of the absolute fundamentals is that every pro controls the low point of their swing, and they place that low point of their swing in front of the ball. When a golf ball is on the ground, you cannot hit it solid unless you hit down on it. You must hit the ball before the swing reaches its lowest point. You cannot place the low point of the swing in front of the ball, and you cannot hit down on the ball unless the hands are in front of the ball and the shaft is leaning towards the target. Now let's look at the weight shift. I've drawn a yellow line from the bottom of the ankle straight up, and that line passes right through his belt buckle. The average pro has 85% of their weight on the left foot at impact. The low point of your golf swing is correlated to the location of the center of your body mass. If you can get more of your body mass on that left side, it makes it easier to put the low point of your golf swing in front of the golf ball. It's easy to see how Grant Waite is driving through the ball and towards the target. You can see how his legs are angled as he's driving forward. He has certainly more weight on his left foot than his right. His right foot is leaving the ground and is kind of banking. His outside of that shoe is lifting up. Your golf swing is a circle, and in order to control the golf ball, you must try to control your golf circle. This line from the left arm through the shaft is the radius of that circle. The left arm is extended in order to have a constant radius. The golf swing also has to have a center of the circle. One of the reasons that you'll see the spine tilted back a little bit is that the head is the center of this circle, and it must remain stationary so that the circle stays still as the club swings around the circle. You drive the lower body under the still head. Now let's look at the fundamentals of the other positions of the golf swing and see how they're linked to the fundamentals of impact. Okay, John, we're going to compare your swing to Grant Waite. Grant is a right-handed player, but I have flipped him around into a left-handed position. First of all, let's look at the right arm, the lead arm. Grant has it as an extension in his arm, and it's in line with the shaft. You're pretty close to that same position. Grant's hands are a little more forward, so he has a little bit more shaft lean at impact than you do. You're a little bit more vertical with your shaft. This is at the beginning of our session. We worked on moving your low point in front of the ball with some drills, and this is a video of your swing in the early part of the session and not toward the end. Now we're going to look at your weight distribution at impact. Grant Waite has most of his weight on his front foot at impact. The average pro has 85% of their weight on their front foot at impact. I've drawn a line from the center of his front ankle straight up, and it passes right through his center of his body, right through his belt buckle. You have still a majority of your weight behind your front foot. And so what that means is that kind of wherever your center of body mass is determines the location of the low point of your swing. The other noticeable visual difference between Grant's position at impact and yours is how his legs, his lower body, is driving towards the target. He's off of his back foot, just the toe, the inside of his toe, big toe is on the ground. His legs are angled toward the target. You're still pretty straight, flat-footed here at impact. You really haven't shifted to the front foot. So Grant has done things as he approached impact and at impact to help him have the low point of his swing in front of that golf ball so he can hit the ball first and the ground second. In the early session here, you had too much weight on your back foot and you did not arrive at that impact position with the majority of your weight on your front foot. One of the most important things you're trying to achieve at impact is putting the club in the proper position so that it can create the direction and the power you want for the shot. And that requires having the low point in front of the ball when the ball is on the ground. It's slightly different when you teeing it up and you're hitting a driver. Now we're going to look at the other positions in the golf swing to see if those positions are facilitating arriving at a good impact position. Everything you do before impact is done to prepare for impact. First, let's look at the starting position. Grant has a nice extension in his right arm, has the shaft slightly forward, his hands forward. He's almost in a little mini impact position at the setup. So he's measuring himself to the ball and setting himself up in preparation for a good impact. You also have your hands slightly in front of the club face and slightly in front of the ball. Your right arm is extended, very nice extension there. So you also have set up in kind of a little mini impact position. Very good. Now we're looking at the weight distribution at the setup. Grant has a little more weight on his front foot than his back foot. The model is to have about 55% of your weight on your front foot and 45% on the back foot. You have a little bit less weight. You're more centered, more 50-50. In fact, you may even have slightly more weight on your back foot. One of the other visual differences between Grant's setup and yours, one, his stance is a little bit wider than yours. He has a little bit more of an athletic stance, more of an athletic position. He's going to want to use his legs more, his lower body, to generate some power. You're a little bit close with your feet, and it almost takes the legs out of the swing and puts too much pressure on your upper body to produce all the club head speed. And so we want to set our lower body up in an athletic position so that it can participate more in providing some power. We particularly want to turn the toes out a little bit, this front foot, to facilitate a weight shift to the front leg at impact and beyond. If you have a square foot and you shift your weight to your front foot, it would cause the ankle to roll on its side, and it would resist that. When you turn the foot out and you shift your weight to the front foot, that weight is distributed to the front of the foot, the front of the ankle, and not the side of the ankle, and it will not resist that. Here we are in the backswings 3 position. This is when the hands are level with the shoulder. Grant has a nice extension in his arm. You do as well. The main difference here is in the weight distribution. Grant has maintained the majority of his weight on that front leg as he rotates back. You have kind of rocked back a little bit to your back foot. This knee has moved laterally towards the back foot, so that even though you set up with your hands in front of the golf ball and you set up with your low point in front of the golf ball, in your backswing you erase all that, and now your low point is behind the ball. And so you've added a complexity in your golf swing, because now you have to figure out how to, in the downswing, get that low point back up in front of the ball. Grant doesn't have that added complexity. He has maintained his low point in front of the golf ball, so he doesn't have to make any compensation moves to get it up there in the downswing. It'll just, because it's already starting there. Okay, now we're at the top of the backswing. First, let's talk about the weight distribution. Grant has kept his weight on that front foot. In fact, he is starting to almost press down into the ground with his weight into that front leg. It's almost like a field goal kicker planting that foot and getting ready to kick the football. He's planting that leg, pressing down, ready to drive the left side into the ball. He has kept his extension in his right arm. You have bent your elbow here, and of course you've overswung, and we talked about this, that it is a idiosyncrasy of yours. You've had it probably your whole golfing career. It is dramatically different than Grant. It's very much of an overswing, but I'm not convinced yet that this is in the top priority list of things you should change. I'm comfortable at this point in leaving that alone and working on some other important pieces. I think we can improve your ball flight, improve your score by working on these other pieces first, and leave this alone. You have a fairly repetitive motion, even though it's a John Daly type of motion. I believe that if we get these other pieces correct, you can maintain that. After we finish these other pieces, then we can take another look at this to see if we can't improve your score even more by a change here. But at this point, it's not our priority. I actually believe that once we work on improving your lower body so that you're getting more power out of your lower body, that you may naturally start reducing some of this overswing. Okay, now we're in the sixth position. This is right before impact. This is when the club is parallel to the ground on the downswing. Again, we can see how Grant is driving towards the target. His knees are even more forward towards the target. His legs are bracing and pushing the ground towards the target. You're pretty straight-legged here. The other thing that I like to look at in the sixth position is the position of the hands in relationship to the body, the position of the left elbow at the sixth position. Grant has tucked his elbow into his side and his hip, and so have you. So the arm position from the shoulder down to the elbow is very much like Grant has. Now Grant has moved his hands further forward. His hands have traveled further in the downswing by the time his club gets parallel. Your hands don't travel as far forward in your downswing when your club gets to parallel. That is an indication and evidence of how much power you have retained in the wrist angle and loading the hands and loading the shaft. You have released some of that energy before you get to impact, and so you'll lose some power and club head speed with that. Grant's hands are in front of his back foot. His hands are in front of his back thigh. Your hands are a little bit behind the back foot and behind the thigh, so you're not pulling that and holding that angle as much. You have that particular move is a very sophisticated, professional, pro-like fundamental, and not a lot of amateur players achieve this move to this degree of success. So you're in pretty good position. I think once we get that lower body to move more towards the target, that will assist in moving those hands into a better power position at the sixth position. Here we are in the ninth position. This is when the left hand is level with the shoulder, the left shoulder. Grant has his left arm fully extended when he's in this position. You have bent your arm a little bit here. You don't have that extension and extend out to the target with this post-impact position. Grant's right arm is also extended. His elbows are close together. Both elbows are in front of his chest. Your right arm is also bent. Your elbows are separating. Your right elbow has swung around almost around behind you to on the side. It did not stay in front of your chest. And this is an important power position, control position, and we'll be working on that. One of the things that'll help achieve the extension of both arms in the ninth position is to have your lower body rotate more. Grant has rotated his lower body. His left pocket has swung and turned and pivoted. His belt buckle is facing the target. I've drawn a line from his left pocket straight down to the ground, and it passes right over his front foot. Your left pocket is still hanging back here on your back foot. You really haven't turned your belt buckle, your lower body towards the target. The front of your body is still hasn't rotated much. Grant is off his back foot the same way he was at impact. The post-impact positions don't affect the golf ball, obviously, because the ball's already left the club, but they give us clues as to what you were doing prior to impact. And so with these clues, we can change some of the pre-impact positions in order to arrive at a better post-impact position. Here we are at the final position, the 10th position. Grant is in that classic pro pose, standing tall on his front leg, looking out over his left arm. He's off his back foot. His back foot is on the tip of the toe. When I look at your upper body, you look very similar to Grant. You've turned, you're standing tall, you're looking over your left arm. From the waist up, you look almost identical to Grant. The biggest difference is in the waist down. And so as we continue to work on changes to your lower body's action through the swing, we'll be widening that stance, we'll be flaring this foot, we'll be shifting more to the front leg. Then you'll be able to pivot this pocket, you'll be able to turn this knee a little bit more, and you'll end up on that toe of your foot, and you'll have a much better finish as well. John, I had just completed a review of your swing at the beginning of our session. Here is a side-by-side comparison of your swing at the beginning of the session and then the swing at the end of the session after we had made some adjustments. On the left here is your swing at the beginning of the session, and on the right toward the end of the session. One of the things I want to point out initially, I've drawn a red line from the outside of your foot straight up, and you can see how on the right picture here that you have maintained a lot more weight on your front leg when you got to the top of the backswing. I had mentioned how when we looked at Grant in this position, how he was almost falling and pressing down into that front leg to create some power in his lower body. And I can see how your forward hip here is on that line, whereas it's away from the line at the beginning of the session because you had rocked back a little bit in your backswing. Here you didn't rock back, you stayed on that front leg, you're pressing down into that right leg. So you made a big improvement there, and that helped keep your low point in front of that golf ball. And you achieved this after working on several drills where you stayed on that front foot. That's a big improvement, and you did start hitting the ball much more crisply and more solid because of controlling your low point. Very good. Here we are at impact, and once again it's a subtle difference, but it's an important difference. On the right is at the end of the session, and you can see how you have moved your hip further forward past this red line. You have shifted more weight on that your right side, your forward side. So you are not hanging back now. You were kind of hanging back at the beginning of the session. Now you're moving towards the target in your downswing. You're putting more weight on that front foot in the downswing. You have more weight on your front foot at impact. And that's going to help you hit the ball first and the ground second and have a much more consistent, solid shot. Here we are in the post-impact position, the 9th position. This is when the hands are level with the left shoulder. Again, there are some subtle differences, but they're important differences. On the left here, this is at the beginning of the session, you can notice that I do not see your right hand. I don't see the white glove underneath the left hand. I do in the new swing. That's an indication that your wrists have crossed, that your elbow has stayed a little bit more forward, you're extending a little bit more. And so that's a good change right there. Once we get the lower body to pivot more, not only shift its weight, but also turn now. You have improved your shift to the right, but now we need to also add to that a turn. We need to let this left leg release and turn and bring this knee up towards the front foot. We need to have this left hip pivot a little bit more towards the front foot and try to push our belt buckle more forward instead of just sliding. you've just started to rebuild your swing, we're working on it one piece at a time. You've made a big improvement on that first piece, and we'll continue to improve that. Here you are at the final position, the 10th position, and a big obvious difference here. You can see how you're much more of your weight is on this front foot. You're almost falling back here in this first picture, but you're standing much more on your front foot. Your left shoulder is closer to the red line. Your elbow is almost on the red line. So you've definitely made a big improvement in getting to your right side in the follow-through. This concludes your swing report for your first session, and we're going to continue to make improvements, and in future sessions we'll do another swing report to show even more changes in your swing as we go forward.